about mentor screening. We're going to be talking about mentor screening for success and safety today. So buckle in. It's going to be a lot of info, but it's going to be really great. So thank you all for being here. Before we jump into the content and introducing ourselves, just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are. So if you're unfamiliar with Mentor Maryland DC, we are Maryland and DC's affiliate of Mentor, which is a national organization of Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. We launched in 2018, and our mission and vision is to increase the quality and the quantity of mentoring relationships across the country and close that mentoring gap. So we know we can do that by supporting programs like all of you who are here. So making sure that programs feel supported, empowered, and that y'all have the resources to do that. So we provide trainings and we do research and we do things like this so that y'all can have all of the resources you need. So we're really glad you're all here today. And we are Mentor Maryland DC. And I just want to talk a little bit about some different offerings we have going on. We'll talk about these at the end when we go over resources as well. But I really want to highlight that we are connected to our national mentoring partnership. So that's where you'll find like best practices of mentoring. There's some trainings on there. We have a national mentoring summit that happens in January. You can find all that information on mentoring.org, which is our like national parenting organization. We also provide free technical assistance and consultation to programs. So that's a great thing to take advantage of if y'all are looking for any support there. And then some of these other items like being connected to our mentoring connector and access to different systems as well. So definitely take a look at these. We'll be sending out this PowerPoint after the training as well. So you'll have access to all of these links to look over too. All right. So just some quick logistics. I know y'all have all probably been in so many webinars, especially after COVID, but just make sure that, you know, you're remaining muted unless you're called upon, that you're using the chat box and being engaging there. Throw any comments in there, any questions in there, any additional resources you think of. We'd love to make sure that we're using that. You can also raise your hand if you have any like things to add or questions or anything throughout. You can also, if you have any issues or with connecting or hearing or anything, feel free to, you can message Renee or Andrew, who are both also with Mentor Maryland DC, and they can assist you. And then towards the end of the presentation, we'll have a session evaluation, and we just ask that you complete that. So we just ask for some space and some grace in this virtual world, but we are so excited to be here again with y'all today. All right, and then just setting up some of our community standards. So the goal of Mentor Maryland DC in this training and in really any gatherings that we're in is to create community. That's like our biggest thing. We really just want to make sure we're creating community wherever we can, wherever we are. We believe that community is the cure and the foundation of learning, being seen, being heard. We also know that's what all of the youth that we all work with crave from us more than anything. So in order to do that, we have a few community standards we just want to go over and make sure we all agree to. So our community is open to all, but we absolutely acknowledge the deep-seated racism, sexism, homo and transphobia, misogyny and ableism that is pervasive in our country and our society. So we stand against these isms and actively work to this aim, especially with our youth. This means we have to also acknowledge it and acknowledge that we approach our work differently and beautifully. We want to share openly and listen more openly, but also be open when your sharing might hurt some. So just be cognizant that your like, aha, yes, that's such a good point moment might be a trigger for someone. And so just be mindful of that, especially if you were to receive that feedback. Our third community standard is just being generous with positive assumptions. Don't be afraid to ask genuine questions. We've all heard the saying like assume positive intentions, and we ask that you do that here. That does not mean that that impact can't be harmful, which is why we just ask if we're all feeling a certain way or if someone has a question about something that you just turn that to wonder and questions and, you know, ask, I wonder why they said that or why they feel that way, and being open to assuming positive things while also openly questioning and genuinely questioning. No matter your role here, this is one of my favorites. No matter your role here today, be a host. So while this space is being curated by our team here at Mentor Maryland DC, It is owned by all of us as hosts, meaning we all have the ability to make everyone feel great, and we can all approach one another with openness and warmth and create this space to be what we want. So we're all hosts of this space, and we can all enjoy and be a part of this space, and it's all our responsibility to ensure that this is a space that we all feel good in. Our next community standard is we don't endeavor to create safe or comfortable spaces, but rather brave spaces where discomfort can be explored and beliefs and practices challenged. So we know that learning and growth can be uncomfortable, which means that something might not feel great or comfortable. It does not mean we're in danger. So just making sure you're looking for the lesson in your emotions and reactions when that happens. Ooh. And we want this community and experience to be supportive and educational, but also fun. So bring your present self, whatever that might look like for you today. It is welcome. We're really glad to have you all here and connect in that way. And last but not least, no fixing, saving, advising, or correcting one another. So this is actually taken from one of our tools, the Touchstone for Developing Trust framework. So this is somewhat self-explanatory, but if you feel the need to deliver feedback, just make sure you're asking for permission first, but make sure you're listening. But thank you for chilling with me here and listening through all of these community standards. We just want to let everyone know that if our staff feels there's any violation of these standards, we'll make sure we are communicating that, but also that we have the right to speak one-on-one to folks while also seeking a resolution or removing someone from our training. We just want to make sure this is a space that we all feel great and comfy in. If you feel that there's a potential violation or anything, please message any of us at Mentor Maryland DC, and we would love to correct that and do our best to address it. So are we all good? Can we all agree to these standards? Some thumbs up. Awesome. All right, so we'll get into some introductions. So hi, that's me. I'm Kiana. I am the Program Outreach and Support Manager here at the Mentor Maryland DC, and I oversee the Greater Maryland region. I've been working in youth development and specifically mentoring for about 6 years. I am originally from South Carolina, so if there's any other Southerners, let me know in the chat. But I've been in Baltimore for 6 years now, so I claim it. And I'm an AmeriCorps alum. I'm a first-generation American-born and a first-generation high school and college grad. I also have two of my colleagues here, and I can let them introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Mock. My pronouns are she, they, and operations manager here at Mentor Maryland, DC. My dog is also here, potentially interrupting me, but I will be happy to contribute where I can today, and I'm in the chat as well.
And hello, my name is Andrew Lova. I'm the Program Outreach Vista working with Mentor Maryland, DC. Now I'm actually on my second term as an AmeriCorps member, so all good.
Woohoo! So if y'all need anything today, there are your go-tos in the chat if y'all have any questions or need anything. But let's figure out what we're going over today, and then I love to hear who all of you are. So today we have a packed agenda. We're going to be doing an icebreaker, talking about what we're learning today, an intro to our elements of effective practice for mentoring, talking through the standards and standard number 2, which is screening, figuring out why we screen, the principles and processes, get a little deeper into those background checks, and then we'll do a little review and reflection. So jumping into our icebreaker. First, please introduce yourselves in the chat, unmute. I'd love to know who's here. I can literally only see 2 people on my screen as I'm sharing my screen. So feel free to share your name, your pronouns, what program you're with. And then in a second, once we get that going, Renee is going to share a Jamboard, and we'll be able to share any questions we have regarding this topic, and we'll make sure we're addressing those throughout. So name, pronouns, program in the chat, or unmute if you're feeling particularly chatty and want to hang, and then we'll move over to Jamboard.
Oh yeah, it started in the chat. I think for time we'll keep it moving. I think we have almost everybody.
Woohoo!
If you've not done it yet, let's do it. Well, I have the link ready when you're ready, Kiana.
I am ready. Do you need me to stop sharing so you can share?
Oh yeah, you want me to share?
The Jamboard?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. I'm getting a look at the chat. Awesome. So many familiar names. Glad you're all here. Looking to see if I see any other Southerners.
Well, hey, Arch for Learning.
All right. Thank you for sharing that Jamboard, Renee.
Yeah, whenever you stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine.
Mm-hmm. Woohoo! All right, folks. So in the link that Renee dropped in the chat, and for those of you that just joined, we'll redrop that in the chat here in a second. We would love to just hear any essential questions you have, and we'll see how many we can address throughout the training and then pop back over to this at the end. But Jamboard will be our friend today, so we'll be in here quite a bit. So if you're not familiar with Jamboard, over on the left, you'll see the sticky notes, and then you can click and type in your questions. You can make it any color you want, and then you can just put that wherever you'd like. Beautiful, Renee, with the demonstration. I'm so on it.
And we're just on this first Jamboard for now, so just say one up here. Maybe questions here. Thanks for those who are still introducing themselves. Welcome. We're on the first slide of this Jamboard.
Mm-hmm. Good call, Natasha.
Should be available. I'm dropping now.
You should all be able to refresh if you're already in there and add in some questions. We'll give us another minute or two. And if y'all think of any questions throughout the training, you can also put them in here and we'll come back to them as well.
Refresh your browser if you need edit access. It should be public.
All right. These are some good questions, folks. All right, and y'all can continue doing that. I'm just gonna move into some more of our content. Oh, Bridget, I'm sorry. It should just be a link like in your web browser. But if you're having any trouble, you can also chat those questions over to Renee or Andrew, and they can also put them in the notes for you guys. And that applies to everyone. If any of y'all are having trouble accessing it, feel free to chat those questions over to Renee or Andrew in our chat. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Awesome. Okay. Can y'all see my screen? Awesome. Perfect.
Well, we can see your presenter view, Tiana.
Boo. Let's try again. How about now?
You're good.
Oh, I can't see my presenter. Sorry, folks. I am not very techy, as
You
you're
just did it. You
learning.
just had it.
Well, I couldn't, it didn't give me the option to do
Oh,
green
okay.
text. I need my notes. Okay. Oh, I lost you guys. Okay. Here we are. We're doing it, team. Oop. Okay, you can see just the screen,
Yes.
hopefully. Yay. Okay, we did it. So thank y'all for kicking it with that icebreaker. We love seeing you all's in the room. Keep adding those questions in. And as we get started today, also please excuse me, I'm really allergic to everything in the world, so I might sound a little funny today. But disclaimer, this training should not be viewed as the rendering of legal advice or anything like that. All of you programs, please make sure you're consulting your legal counsel and your state local laws prior to implementing the recommendations from this training. All this information will still be relevant and wonderful and helpful, but just for liability reasons, please make sure that you are seeking legal advice. And this is also a great point that if you are a newer program, please make sure you are implementing those things that you have some legal counsel. So just want to highlight that before we jump into the meat and potatoes. So session outcomes today. By the end of the session, we are hoping that you'll be able to summarize the screening benchmarks for mentors and mentees. You'll be able to identify screening practices to determine if mentor applicants will have the time, commitment, and personal qualities to effectively mentor. You'll be able to list the key components of a comprehensive criminal background check process, that you will translate screening requirements to their program setting and apply the training standard from the 4th edition of the Elements of Effective Practice. So as we're going through this, there's going to be a lot of things we're learning. Renee is going to be sharing a screening handout in the chat with y'all here shortly. It should be a PDF that you'll be able to open and download. And so this is something that you'll also be able to follow along with, especially with our activities. But these are the things we're hoping you learn today. So some of y'all have already heard us mention the elements of effective practice and are probably like, what is that? The elements of effective practice for mentoring. It is research-informed practices and evidence-based standards and benchmarks. And so this is something that our Mentor National created with a bunch of research and a bunch of evidence-based things. And so this is really where we are. This is standard number 2 that we're focusing in on today. It also includes enhancements that can promote relationship quality and strong outcomes. And it has recommendations on program management, leadership, evaluation, and things like that. But the screening benchmarks, they detail research-informed practices for screening prospective mentors, mentees, parents, guardians, to ensure a safe and effective match. And so mentoring programs must follow the benchmarks, which you're about to see, the ones for screening, to meet the standard. And then, as we mentioned, those enhancements that we'll also go over, those are just additional, like promising best practices. So they're not required for programs to meet the standard, but are recommended for, as we said, promoting stronger relationship quality and stronger outcomes. So additional information about standard 2, which is what we're going over today, and the benchmarks can be found in the Elements of Effective Practice, also in that handout that Renee shared. And as we just want to emphasize that each program is responsible for creating its own policies and procedures, consistently reviewing them and keeping them up to date. And to ensure due diligence, this is just a guide to do that. But we'll be reviewing things from the 4th edition, but our 5th edition will actually be coming out soon. Whoop, whoop. All right, so Standard number 2 is on screening mentors and mentees. So we're going to go over screening mentors. Y'all are probably already sick of hearing my voice with all these allergies. So I'd love if I could get some of y'all to read. I'll also jump in and read some, but I'm going to read number 1. And then if y'all are just feeling super chatty, please unmute and we'll do that in that way. Someone can read 2, 3, 4, and so on. So I'll kick us off. Standard number 1 for screening mentors is program has established criteria for accepting mentors into the program, as well as criteria for disqualifying mentor applicants. Someone read number 2 for me.
Prospective mentors complete a written application that includes questions designed to help assess their safety and suitability for mentoring a youth.
Thank you, Mark. Number 3.
Program conducts at least one face-to-face interview with each prospective mentor that includes questions designed to help the program assess his or her suitability for mentoring a youth.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiana. Number 4, anyone?
Program conducts a comprehensive criminal background check on prospective adult mentors, including searching the National Criminal Record Database, along with sex offender and child abuse registries and when relative driving records.
Awesome. Thanks, Ebony. All right. So those are the first few on screening mentors. We have a few more. I'll kick off number 5. Program conducts reference check interviews with multiple adults who know an applicant, ideally both personal and professional references that include questions to help assess his or her suitability for mentoring a youth. I got someone for number 6.
Prospective mentors agree in writing to a 1-year calendar or school minimum commitment for the mentoring relationship, or a minimum time commitment that is required by the mentoring program.
Perfect. Thanks, Natasha. Number 7.
Prospective mentors agree in writing to participate in face-to-face meetings with their mentees that average a minimum of once a week and a total of 4 or more hours per month over the course of the relationship, or at a minimum frequency and amount of hours that are required by their mentoring program.
Awesome. Y'all are literally pro readers. You should just do this whole training for me. Thank you. All right. And then we have some more on screening mentees. So those were on screening mentors. We're moving into screening mentees. These are still part of the benchmark. So number 8 is program has established criteria for accepting youth into the program, as well as criteria that would disqualify a potential youth participant. Do I have someone for 9?
Parents and guardians complete an application or referral form.
Awesome. I can do 10 real quick. Parent and guardians provide informed permission for their child to participate. To have someone for 11.
Parent, guardian, and mentee agree in writing to a 1-year calendar or school minimum commitment for the mentoring relationship, or the minimum time committed that is required by the mentoring program.
Perfect. 12. Parents and guardians and mentees agree in writing that mentees participate in face-to-face meetings with their mentors that average a minimum of once a week and a total of 4 or more hours per month over the course of the relationship, or at a minimum frequency and amount of hours that are required by the mentoring program. So those are all of our standards that must be met to meet the standards. So these are what we call benchmarks. The next are enhancements. So these are best practices that if you do them, even better. So we have a few. So I'll read through these real quick. So enhancement number 1, program utilizes national fingerprint-based FBI background checks. Program conducts at least one home visit of each prospective mentor, especially when the match may be meeting in the mentor's home. The program conducts comprehensive criminal background checks on all adults living in the home of prospective mentors, including searches of a national criminal records database, along with sex offender and child abuse registries when the match may meet in the mentor's homes. School-based programs assess mentors' interest in maintaining contact with their mentees during the summer months following the close of the academic school year and offer assistance to matches in maintaining contact. Programs that utilize adult mentors prioritize accepting mentor applicants who are older than college age. And program uses evidence-based screening tools and practices to identify individuals who have attitudes and beliefs that support safe and effective mentoring relationships. So these are the enhancements for screening mentors. We have 2 quick enhancements for screening mentees, which are that the mentees complete an application, either written or verbally, and that the mentees provide written assent agreeing to participate in their mentoring program. So that was a lot of information. Those are in your packets, in your handouts. This is also like, you'll find this in the elements for effective practice, but this is really what we're basing most of our content on today. And we'll be going a little deeper in this. All right, so why do we screen? Let's get some ideas for why we might screen. We're going to brainstorm together. And so Renee is going to be sharing the Jamboard again, and we're going to go on to page number 2 of our Jamboard, I think. Yes, so
Yeah,
on our
so
Jamboard.
go to the top. You'll go to page 2 over here. I have 2
Awesome.
questions.
Yep. So why do you think we screen mentors? Please put those in as sticky notes. If you're having trouble accessing the Jamboard, feel free to chat any of our other Mentor Maryland DC folks in here, and they can put it in for you. I believe we have Andrew, Andre, and Dayon in here. So why do you think we screen mentors? Why do you think we screen mentees?
For everyone writing in the chat, we do save the chat file. So we will share the chat file out with everybody after the call as well with the recording.
Awesome. It's interest safety, interest and willingness. That's really good. Keep them coming. Why do we screen mentors and why do we screen mentees? Natalie, if you might want to try refreshing your browser, and if that's still not working, let us know. All right, we'll give you all about a minute or so, and then we're going to start to sort them.
Negotiating with a terrorist over here today. Yes,
All right.
someone being tortured. It's good and crowded over here.
Sounds like we're winding down. All right, team. So we are going to do our best to sort these into safety and suitability, which I believe is where, not I believe, this is when the elements of effective practice for mentoring tells us. But in theory, most of these should fall in the buckets of suitability and safety. Those are the 2 biggest buckets. So let's try to sort these for that. So feel free to throw it in the chat as I'm reading some of these out. So we're going to change the color of these. So let's do pink for safety and blue for suitability. So ensuring the safety of the mentees. Safety.
Wait, say the colors again. Pink for safety.
Pink for safety. I'll put it in the chat. Pink, safety. And suitability, which I can't spell. Don't make fun of me, please. Blue.
Got it.
All right. Perfect. So All right, team. So, how do we feel about making sure the mentor and mentee are a match? Would that be safety or suitability? Feel free to put it in the chat. Feels like suitability to me.
Yeah.
Awesome. I see y'all in the chat. Thank you. What about ensuring active participation? Yeah, a lot of these are falling under suitability. Thank you, Natasha. Awesome. Interests and concerns for better matching, definitely suitability. Willingness to participate in the program would be suitability. Better understanding of the program. Perfect. Does anyone have any questions about any of these, or were there some that maybe you didn't have come up, but you're like, oh, this is something I have a question about and I don't know why we screen for these things? All right, we'll come back to this, but this was just to get our brains moving a little bit on why we screen. So I'm gonna throw us back to our
I just want to say I love how
presentation.
serious everybody's taking safety.
I agree.
Important.
Safety in all caps really did it for me over there in the upper right. That was my favorite.
I always say it's people, youth programs, and our first job is safety. So great work, everybody.
Good job, team. We love safety. Oop, that's not what I wanted to share. Ooh. All right. So we screen for suitability and safety. So we screen because to make sure we screen mentors to determine whether they have the time, commitment, and personal qualities to be a safe and effective mentor, and screen prospective mentees and their parents and guardians just to make sure they have the time, commitment, and desire to be effectively mentor. Programs should provide due diligence, making sure you're taking any reasonable and necessary steps to ensure the correct course of action is offered in its screening process. And as we just went over, suitability and safety are our key reasons that we screen. Both are equally important, so we always want to make sure that we're prioritizing youth safety, but suitability also goes within that and also leads to youth safety. So when we talk about suitability, we often equate it with the persistence and a good fit with the program requirements and mentees' needs. Mentors who do not persist and matches that end early can actually cause just as much harm or more harm to a child than not ever having a mentor. So suitability is super important. There's research that shows that it is just as harmful to have a match that ends early, and it's oftentimes worse than not even having a match. Sometimes a screening process will reveal a red flag that shows that a volunteer could be difficult to train or coach for ongoing process, or maybe just isn't the right fit for your program and your type of program. So that's where the things under suitability. When it comes to safety, we often equate it with ensuring due diligence to keep mentees safe. So when a youth serving program uses those recommended tools and follows recommended processes, it shows a commitment to the safety of youth in its care. So allowing them to have positive and effective relationships and experiences within the program in a safe environment. So the keys for mentors that we're looking for are time, commitment, personal qualities to be a safe and effective mentor. And the keys for mentees are time, commitment, and a desire to be effectively mentored and wanting to be in that mentoring relationship. But overall, as we've been saying, safety in these mentoring relationships is super important. That includes safety of our young people, foremost, safety of our mentors, and also safety of our programs. All right, so as we know, effective screening reduces risk. We're identifying those who could create an unacceptable risk given unsupervised access to youth. Also preventing placement of individuals who lack time or skills or attitude. So just making sure they're a good fit for your program in general. Again, reducing the risk of those those early end matches. reducing liability as well, and ruling out potentially dangerous individuals. So really a big piece of screening is that it's equally important for us to build relationships with potential mentors. It's something we want to keep in mind. We're also looking for ways to screen in the good prospective mentors, right? So we're looking to screen in as much as we're screening out. Organizations do have the legal right to accept, reject, or terminate. And as y'all may know, there are no limitations on what information you can ask. But I really want to say within that you should not be over questioning for the position. The questions and information should be appropriate for the position description. And again, we're really trying to build relationships here and ensure that we're screening in the good mentors. But along with that, there's more limitations on who can view and how to store information. So making sure you are keeping in mind data privacy and storage. But every candidate should go through the same process, regardless of who referred them or their standing in the community. So these are our principles. These are things we want to make sure are happening within our screening. And just a few more, we want to make sure that volunteer application process should be completed and documented before the candidate is accepted. So making sure their application is fully complete before making any of those decisions, making sure that all staff support that decision. And that once they are matched with a mentor, that you are continuing to monitor to ensure for youth safety. It's not just in the screening process that we're doing that, but also just throughout the entire match. Okay. Any questions so far? I know this is very content heavy. Cool. And if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or put them in our Jamboard that we shared at the beginning. So the screening process, there's 8 steps that the EEPM identifies, which are orientation session, an application packet, a formal interview with reference checks, a criminal history record check, and we highly recommend FBI check. And we'll talk a bit more about that here in a bit. Interpreting the results of the records, any additional screening mechanisms that your organization has, as well as pre-match training and match supervision. So this is like the golden standard for what the screening process would look like, noting that it does lead to training and matching.
Can I interrupt, Kiana?
Yes, please.
Real quick. So even before orientation, right? As soon as you meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm interested, or before that, as soon as you're talking to someone, that's screening, right? And when it says step 8, match supervision, that's the length that somebody's in your program. Every time they show up, they're being screened. You're screening them. They could be screening themselves out of your program potentially, right? By their behavior every time they show up. This is what my dog goes to doggy daycare. He had to get screened in, and they say every time he shows up, he's being screened. He could screen himself on out of there if he comes and he proves himself to be unsafe. The same goes for your young people, right? If they do something that proves themselves to make themselves an unsafe member of the program, they screen themselves out. So screening, it's nicely looks like steps, but it starts as soon as that somebody comes to interact with you in your program. And step 8 goes on for the duration of their time in your program. So I always talk about in the EEB programs that like everything starts at recruitment and kind of doesn't really end. And that's kind of the work of the full of best practices, is that like you're always implementing all of them at the same time.
Yeah. That's really good. Thank you, Renee, for reiterating that and flagging that. So this is happening throughout. And part of, again, why we're screening is to, as Renee said, discover how a mentor will react to things also that are happening throughout their tenure with us, whether that be dealing with adversity, managing conflict, managing their time. And these are things that you might note early in the application process with how they're emailing you from in their training process, whatever that may look like. So we're screening to discover how they'll deal with adversity, manage conflict, manage time, solve problems, approach communication, manage stress, adapt to new situations, and other things based on your mentees and your program models. So if you're, dealing with, if you're program has a very specific population, also seeing how they interact with certain communities and populations and things like that as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what this means for our individual programs. So we're going to break out into some breakout groups. We're going to have about 5 minutes to discuss these questions that are on your screen. So we're going to do that and we're going to chat. It's going to be really great. So Renee's going to break us out into some breakout groups. We'll have 5 minutes on the clock. If y'all could just go over these questions as a group and think about what this means specifically for your program, and we'll come back and chat.
So Kiana, what you're going to want to do is
Okay.
Stop your share and then reshare and click a button that says share to breakout rooms when I open the rooms. I'm about to open the rooms, everybody. It should automatically move you into them. Okay. And here we go.
Oh yeah, we're doing it. All right, friends. So there were some breakout groups and y'all had some conversations. I would love to hear them. Does anyone want to share what y'all talked about, or maybe anything that came up?
Hello everyone. My name is Richard. I'm with Best Kids here in DC, and I was just in the group, and I was sharing. I tried to handle the second question as much as I could, and here in Best Kids, what we do is we have a very extensive screening process for the mentors and the mentees. And the reason for doing this is pretty simple. We just want to be able to match people who are in sync. Now, ordinarily, that's what we would love, because we want the mentees to be able to gain much from the program as much as the mentors as well. Now, we don't live in an ideal society. So what we try to do is, even if we could get 60% to 70% of matches, being in sync to some extent, it helps everybody in the long run. Just 2 days ago, I interviewed, I'm so sorry, I'm doing this on my phone. I'm getting calls coming through from my program director. I interviewed a prospective mentor, and he was saying that, I am not a people person, because one of the questions was like, how do you relate with people? And she was like, I'm not a people person, so this is going to be a learning curve for me. And I was very impressed by her response, but the main thing is to try to talk to both sides, to try and see where you can meet a level playing field. The mentees will have their own, suggestions as to how a prospective mentor should be and what qualities they should be. Yours as somebody, as a middle person, is to listen to both sides and to try as much as possible to pair them with someone who they would love to hang out with. They will feel safe to hang out with. In the end, all of these things comes to play. So I guess that's a little thing that I can share with all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good, Richard. And that actually highlighted, I think oftentimes when we think of screening mentors, or at least I do. I think rigorous screening of mentors, making sure that everything is safety, making sure that we're screening them in and out. But you really brought up a good point of screening for mentees is just as important, right? And making sure that we're screening them for suitability and fit, just like we do for mentors, to make sure that they get the most out of the program. That's really good. Anything else that came out of groups, or anything else people want to share?
I would like to follow up on question number 2. I was just saying I'm with Lead for Life, and one of the processes that we do in screening mentors, after they have their interviews, they get a guest for hire. If they get a guest for hire, what we do is we schedule them for a 2-hour shadowing. So they meet with one of our senior mentors. They'll go to the locations where the kids are, and you get to sit for 2 hours to see how the kids are. The kids also get to meet you. And there's a lot of times where all the kids can be there. There can be a time that something could be going on, and you're like, oh, okay, is this what I really want to do? And then after you complete your 2-hour training, shadowing, our scheduler call you and say, how did it go? How do you, see yourself doing it? Do you see that you're a good fit? And, you have some people that say, yes, I can do it. But you also have some that may say, no, that may be too much. And I don't want to waste your time or waste mine. So I think that's one of the really good things that we do a part of our hiring process.
Yeah, like giving them a real taste of what it would be like so that they have the option to screen out, right?
Yes.
That's really good. That one of my AmeriCorps year did that, and that I learned so much in that shadowing experience, and it was very much a quick yes or a quick no, right?
Yeah, you learn a nice amount in that little bit of time, believe it or not.
Agreed. I like that. Anyone else? Do one or two more share outs. Did anyone get to figure out what suitability means for their program? Maybe you have very specific eligibility requirements, whether that be for mentors or mentees.
And I could say for Lead for Life, for the mentors, they have to be 25 years or older. They must have a reliable vehicle that is their own. It's not a friend, it's not your mother's or anything. It's yours. You're the insured driver. You have to be able to pass a urine drug test, a FBI background check. Those are the first thing that I send out when someone submit their resume. That's what you get before you even get scheduled for an interview, just to make sure that you meet those criteria, and then you get your interview.
It's good, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about having a vehicle and having driving records is something we'll talk about when we get into background checks. But yeah, ensuring if being in a vehicle is part of your mentoring program, really important to include that in your eligibility requirements. Anyone else? Anything come up for anyone else? Or any questions that came up for people? All right. Well, as we're talking through eligibility, as y'all mentioned, this highlighted a bit about suitability on both the mentor and mentee side, and making sure that mentees are meeting eligibility requirements. That being said, your recruitment process, so recruitment and going into screening, should outline eligibility criteria both for young people and for adults who do or do not meet requirements. So just making sure that's really clear in your recruitment process. And then programs need to make sure that mentees and their parents and guardians are committed to meeting on a regular basis, and so that they're able to see that relationship through. I know we talked a bit about mentors ending the match early, but it happens on the other end too. So making sure that they have all the information needed to know what their time commitment is, and that they can commit to it. So as we're thinking through the eligibility requirements and suitability, another part of that is that we really want to make sure that, as we've mentioned, safety is a key, and that we're really screening out those unsafe applicants. So some common within keep this in mind within context, but some unsafe applicants might be wondering what the screening process is, what the demographics are, how many staff members are dedicated to monitoring the match, how often program staff contact mentors when monitoring ends, and how often they need to meet with their mentee. These are also, some of these on their own are questions that mentors have in general, but within the context of, we'll talk a bit about informed intuition and what that looks like in an interview process, but you want to make sure that within context, this may be just something to keep an eye on if prospective mentor. There's a video that I've seen that shows a mock interview where the prospective mentor in the interview is really hyper fixated on the young person's age. And it's I really like working with tweens, and it's really hyper fixated on it. So those are things you just want to keep in mind. these are not things that would rule a person out if they have just questions, but along with informed intuition. Informed intuition is a judgment that appears quickly and you might not know why. You might just get a bad feeling about something or a good feeling about something and you just don't know why. And that's not something that is in itself strong enough to act upon. But when you have relevant knowledge, like a reference check that comes back negatively or a background check that comes back in a certain way, that's a moment when you would be able to act upon those. So, don't fully negate those feelings, but also keep them in mind, as they might be like some yellow flags as you continue on in your screening process. All right, we are getting into another activity. And we're going to talk about that screening process. So we're going to get into some breakout groups, and in your handouts, which if you don't have a handout, just let Renee know, or let us know in the chat. But we're going to break out into mentor screening and mentee screening breakout groups. We're going to review in those breakout groups the elements, the benchmarks and enhancements that we went over at the beginning. They should be in your handout if you need another quick review. But we're going to go back to Jamboard. Each breakout group will have its own Jamboard, and you're going to list different practices and tools for screening mentors and mentees. So that might look like your applications, or what Ebony mentioned in having the shadowing and things like that. So you're going to start listing those out, and we're going to come back together and just chat about that. So also, if you could just mention why or why not you might be using an enhancement, let us know. But so you're going to want your handouts and your Jamboard. I'm going to stop
So when you get to
sharing.
the Jamboard, can I share my screen really quick, Yana?
Yep.
Yes. So when you get to the Jamboard, you'll see on 3, it says group 1. And there is one of these for each group. You have to go and find yours. When you get into your breakout room, it will say which room you are going to: group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. So just make a note. It'll say at the top of your group what group you are in, and it'll say at the top of your Jamboard which one you are working on. So we are going to put you into those groups now for how long, Kiana? You're on mute.
Thank you. Is 10 minutes aggressive?
No, sure.
Great.
10 minutes, and we will come back.
Woohoo! Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you'll have some great conversations. We're just going to do like group 1, 2, 3, 4, share out, but group 2, you cannot share anything that group 1 shared. Group 3, you cannot share anything that group 1 and 2 shared. So we might dwindle up for group 4, but we're going to kick it off with group 1. What'd y'all talk about? What were your practices and tools and enhancements? We'd love to learn. Anyone from group 1? Do people remember which groups they were in?
Okay, so I believe that it's important to have face-to-face conversations, so that you can get a personal idea of where a person is coming from, their background. And another word that came up previously was diversity. And I think that diversity is important, but it's also important that you are able to be diverse individually with people that you're dealing with, because everybody has their own specific needs, backgrounds, experiences, and I think the easier and the better that we can just accept those, and instead of judging, just listening, accepting, trying to get as much background information, trying to get as good a picture of a view of who we're dealing with is very important. I know background checks, FBI checks, and things like that are very important as well. But I also think that one-on-one and the communication is very, very important too. So the level of communication, to me, in the screening process, hands-on, face-to-face, it's very important.
That's good. That's good, Mark. Making sure you have a face-to-face connection, and what I also heard you say was asking screening questions regarding like background experiences and background and skills, because that might inform what a match might look like and what ensuring diversity, because our young people are also very diverse and come from different experiences. That's really good. Group number 2. What did y'all chat about?
Hi, this is Jordan from Spark the Journey. There's a lot of connective tissue in our discussion of what we discussed. We talked, particularly with us, this is not an exhaustive list of practices and tools for Spark, but we do referrals, an intensive interview process, background checks, a comprehensive mentor training to kind of do level settings of expectations of our just a high level overview of our program, and to demonstrate to mentors what characteristics we want them to exemplify. So that is, that's what we discuss.
It's really good. Jordan, I have a question. When you mentioned your training, does that happen? Is it like a training once they're onboarded, or do you have like an information session where you're setting some of those expectations before they apply? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so there's 2. So we have an information session about our org and the work that we do. And then if we deem you a good fit for the program, you then go to the onboarding mentor training. And it walks you through everything that our organization has to offer.
That's awesome. Do you have anything similar for mentees? So I heard you mention a lot of screening for mentors. Or I'm sorry, you were probably the mentor group. Never mind. Ignore me.
Oh, but to answer your question, yes, we do information sessions when we are recruiting students at partner schools in DC. We recruit students and give them the same presentation that we give our mentors, but we particularly tailor it to that segment of young people. So yes.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Any questions or anything for group 1 and 2 who are going over mentor screening before we move on to 3 and 4 for mentee screening?
I wanted to add something real quick to what Jordan said. And that's to say that pretty much the screening process is time consuming. And we can't bypass them because there are state and local regulations that govern these things. So regardless of how a potential mentor looks suited for the role, you just still have to go by these. Otherwise, the consequences might be way dire and you cannot reverse them. The best we can do while an individual wait to be matched with a potential mentee is over here at Best Kids. We try to add a human face to the whole process by constantly checking in with the mentor, the prospective mentor, and saying, hey, we are on your case. We haven't forgotten about you. This is a local government directive that we need to wait for them. There's a lot of red tape regarding this process, and that's not something that we can bypass over. So it's imperative, and most of the folks over here can attest to the fact that these things need to be done. But while your mentor or prospective mentor is waiting to be cleared, check in with them. Don't let them hang or keep them waiting. not hearing from you, because when that happens, they lose interest and
Mhm.
eventually want to move on. In this day and age, all it takes is, 1 minute of your time, sending them a text or an email saying that, we have you in mind and we're just waiting for what the government brings to us, and eventually we'll get back to you. That's something small that I want to add to what Jordan said.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Richard. That goes directly in with making sure you're building those relationships with prospective mentors, right? So making sure that we're keeping those communication lines open, that you're keeping them updated in the screening process too. That's really good. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Group 3, what did y'all talk about?
I can help explain what Group 3 talked about. So, we talked about a large variety of stuff, but one of the things was from Worcester Connects, where Kayla talked about how, like, normally the mentees are referred from, like, outside sources, or then they get, like, background from family, but they try to also get, like, bring them in person to try to get a feel on, like, the family dynamic and whether the mentee really wants to be there or not, because normally times you can tell if they're being either forced or, like, if they really want to be there.
Yeah, that's huge. Making sure you have mentee buy-in, because like we know young people. Young people, if they do not want to be somewhere, they're not going to engage, and it's not going to be fruitful for anyone. So making sure that they want to be a part of the program and that we're really highlighting and amplifying and that youth voice there. That's really good. And Group 4, did y'all have anything new for mentee screening?
For me, this is Ebony from Lead for Life. I was telling the group I started with Lead for Life in March as a mentor, and just 2 weeks ago, I got promoted to the admin assist. So I really haven't experienced the mentee screening. I've just basically kind of dealt with the mentor screening. But I'm sorry, I can't remember her name.
Juhi.
Juhi. She
Yeah.
really gave me a lot of feedback to help me with the process in the future. So I took down a lot of good notes that she gave me. But yeah,
We
that's
love that. That's awesome. That's like a huge part of what we want. We want y'all to be in community and provide resources to one another. Juhi, what is mentee screening like for you guys?
It can be challenging at times, but that's just the nature of it because it takes time to build relationships anyways. So some of the things, the basics that we try to clear away are the age requirements. It's a one-on-one relationship, so we prepare the children for that. But regardless of how much we prepare them, things always come up. Sometimes it's a little bit of resistance. Sometimes it's just more fun to play at our after-school center than to spend time with the mentor. It is difficult to have the buy-in, but I think it just might take a little longer than what would be expected. Usually we should make a match about within the month after the mentor trains, but that's not always what ends up happening. Sometimes it fizzles out too quickly if we make a match too quickly.
Yeah.
The only other thing was that I had mentioned was the website nmrc.org, because she was new, and then just the elements of practice.
Yeah. Oh, look at you. You already know. Ebony will make sure we hook you up with all the resources. We have a bunch at the end too.
It's still
Cool.
hard work, but but you try not to give up. Just give them their space and you just hope for the best.
Absolutely. So making sure you have those eligibility requirements there so that you're screening in as many as you can, and then hoping that you're able to meet the needs and connect and build those relationships throughout. That's really good.
Right.
Juhi. Cool. All right. So any questions on this that came up before we move on to background checks, which will be our last portion? Ooh. All right. So background check. So this is a part of screening too. Y'all have already mentioned this a bit, but I have different ones listed out here. The first one, state criminal records. It's actually less rigorous of the checks, and it's not recommended. The next four, which are national criminal records, sex offender registries, child abuse registries, and driving records when relevant. So like if driving is required or if young people are going to be in a mentor's vehicle, those are the required benchmarks to meet the standard for screening. And the last one, fingerprint-based FBI background checks. I heard a few of you mention this already, but this is a highly recommended enhancement. Many of you are already doing this. So we're going to get into a little bit about what this looks like in Maryland. So in Maryland, we have our Maryland background checks. Those are state background checks. Many of you probably use them in your programs. We're going to link, and we'll also have this in the resources, but we have some links to share with y'all around more information about Maryland background checks and also those fingerprinting locations and rates based on which categories y'all fall into. Child Protective Services also has some information, which we'll link as well, regarding criminal history checks in Maryland and the requirements there, specifically for organizations working with young people. But something I really want to highlight is NetCheck. It's a discount background check that is, they do state and FBI checks for $15 for any CJIS facility. So anyone that it's specifically made for mentoring programs. So all of y'all that are here, and it's through the Y in Central Maryland. And we're also going to make sure that we are linking y'all that information. So if you're wondering like, how do you get background checks? If you're having issues, like NetCheck is where we want to defer you to, and that it was literally created for volunteering and mentoring programs. But if you are affiliated with a school district, there may be, or if you are school-based, you might be going through the school district there in terms of those background checks. I know background checks are a hefty topic. Are there any questions? Renee, is there anything I missed that you can think of? Anything you want to highlight?
I would say if you are a school-based program, I would recommend deferring to your school district.
Yeah.
About what are their volunteer expectations for anybody who comes into the school building, because they likely have their own discernment about what their expectations are and processes. And you might never know if you don't ask, because it's probably set at the district level. And if you are in a school building, even if you're not technically a program run by a school, right? Like I used to be in a program that was inside of a school building, but we weren't run by a school, right? We were our own program, but we were located within a school building. So that can be good information, and it can help build your relationship with the school, and might make your background check situation hopefully easier.
Yes.
Depending on if you use a mentoring based CRM or database tool, some of them have background check tools inside of them, services that you can pay for to make those things a little bit easier. So just, probing for those kinds of things. Background checks do cost money, which is why NetChecks exists, to have the things discounted. So these are things that need to be part of your budgets and you're part of your program planning and things like that. So things to always be mindful about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Renee. Any questions on background checks?
So I have a question. So for the NetCheck, is that a website that you go to, or because I know like I've sent people for the background check, and there is this place that's in the building with us. They charge $100 for the FBI check, and then for the just Maryland, they charge close to $70. For me, I live in Ellicott City, so the place that I went to for mine, it was just $35.
Yeah. So if your program's go to the NetCheck website.
Okay.
If your program's registered with CJIS, CJIS, then you'll need to register your program with NetCheck.
Okay.
Which again is through the Y. And any questions you have for NetCheck, there is people talk about there, but essentially your program will have a NetCheck card, which you'll give your copy to volunteers or people who are going to go get their fingerprints. But when you show that card, they'll get their discount when they go, and it's only $15 when they go to get their checks.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll make sure we also, like when we share these slides, all those links will be in there too. So we'll make sure you guys have access to all of that.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. So speaking of background checks, some permanent disqualifiers. So these are like no-goes in mentoring. If there is any history of abuse of children, sexual or otherwise, any conviction of any other crime in which children were involved in the crime, a history of extreme violence or sexually exploitative behavior, and if they have termination from a paid or volunteer position because of misconduct or caused by misconduct with a child. So these are things that if these were to come up in the background check or you were to learn through references or whatever form, these would be your permanent disqualifiers, and this would automatically screen these mentors out. All right, y'all, we did it. We're essentially done. We're just going to put it all together. So we have lots of things we talked about today. We talked about informed intuition, written materials, external documents, things you observe in interviews, impressions, that consultation with other staff and making sure you're coming to a decision, those background checks, all of those things are what are going to contribute to that final decision. And you're making sure that you are putting it all together and making the best decision for your program and for your mentees so that they have a successful match with their mentors. We're going to hold off on questions real quick because we are going to go back to our Jamboard. So we're going to go to that first page. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to go back to that first page and see if we have any questions we didn't answer. And that is how we're going to wrap this up. So also, any additional resources in that packet you have, there's a title called like mentor screening recommended tools and processes, and then checklists of guiding questions in developing or strengthening screening and mentoring processes. That'll be a great resource for y'all as well as y'all move forward in this. But we're going to talk through some of these questions, make sure they're all answered, and then we are going to wrap up with some resources and any other questions that we might have missed. All right, so I want to see you guys. Okay. So who can get involved in mentoring, I'm assuming is what that means. It depends on your program. Or what did you think that meant, Renee?
I was going to say who can get involved in screening. I realize it probably is who can get involved in mentoring. I thought it was who can get involved in the screening process, which is a question I'll answer, but you can answer the other question first.
Okay, I'll answer who can get involved in mentoring. So it really depends on your program, right? Based on those eligibility requirements that you've set, making sure they meet those. But then after that, if they meet those eligibility requirements, anyone that falls within those, as long as you're screening them appropriately. Renee?
As far as who can get involved in the screening process, ideally more than one person, right?
Yes.
Especially when Kiana's talking about having those intuitions and things like that. Ideally, we want more than one person at your program interacting with somebody before they come in. Also, ideally, there's some youth voice in there. A young person's interacting with somebody at some point. Of course, we're considering safety measures. Of course, like no youth is never interacting with an adult, an unscreened adult, without you or another staff member present. But there should be some youth voice in all levels of our program, ideally, but in the screening process as well. What does that look like? Youth being present at an interview, youth, helping to write interview questions. Consider youth having a part, some voice and agency in your screening process.
That's good.
I do acknowledge we're at 1:30, but we're happy to keep going through these questions too for everybody who's here to come on.
Yeah. How do you screen for commitment to the program? I would think that would be a lot of like, you go ahead and set those expectations early on in the recruitment phase, right? Like you put that in your job descriptions, you put it in your orientation session, like this is going to require whatever it is, twice a week, 2-hour sessions each week or whatever it is, making sure that people can commit to that. And then also, like you can throw the questions that gauge that in the interview process too. Should mentors participate in ongoing screening even though they work in an ongoing capacity? So there's no like end to the match? Is that what that means maybe? Like they continue to be matched? Yes, in our standards, it mentions that there should be, or even in the process, there should be ongoing monitoring. So even those screenings technically over, there's training and monitoring that at any point could still screen someone out. Let's say if something were to happen, if there were any red flags that came up later, screening is consistently happening, as Renee mentioned earlier, with her example with Butterbean's dog.
Yeah. And I think too, at least on, I don't know if it's annually, but there is a best practice for how often you should rerun a background check. Right, running a background check, I think it's annually or maybe biannually, as in every 2 years, you would run a background check for somebody who has longevity in your program.
I think one of those links that we shared also mentions that.
Yeah.
Do you need prior mentoring experience to participate? Not necessarily. Otherwise, none of us would be here if they required us to all be mentors before. I think there's a lot of other different great backgrounds and experiences that make people be wonderful mentors. But you can screen for that as well. How do
I
we
think
screen?
in your screening too, it might help to inform things you want to add to your training.
That's good. How do we screen year to year for returning mentors? I think, as Renee mentioned, checking what the policy is for background checks, but also like checking that they're still committed and that they have the time, that they're willing, and that they're still safe matches. Just making sure all of those bases are covered.
Yeah, I think an informal return to mentoring meeting, right? It's not an interview. You're literally checking in with them, like you would check in with a kid returning to your program.
Can I chip in something if it's okay?
Yeah, please do, Richard.
If an individual is in the program for a long time and in the initial stages they pass a background check and everything is good with them, the moment they do something wrong and they come into the FBI, whatever state, local government, law enforcement radar, those things get reported in the system. So, it's up to us as, pretty much the nonprofits who run some of these programs to be able to constantly monitor to make sure that if an individual who's been in the system for that long time, if something gets reported in their background, that it doesn't conflict with, the match. For example, if someone who is suddenly a sex offender, in the program would have to be dropped from the program compared to somebody who got a speeding ticket, so those are two different things, depending on the severity of the problem at hand, if I may put it that way. That individual can either be made to step aside from the program or to continue. So I don't know if some things like these do exist, and if not, we could probably encourage that if you've been in the program for more than 5 years, that you're supposed to come back for to get checked again, your background get checked again.
Thank you, Richard. Sorry, I'm like having a coughing attack. Yeah, I agree. So ensuring that there's like things in place to ensure that regardless of the longevity, that people are still getting checked at appropriate intervals and that there's still a process for that. Good. All right, to assure compatibility, yes. What are other organizations following county school guidelines for volunteers and mentors? Or how are other organizations following county and school guidelines for volunteers and mentors? I think, as we mentioned kind of during the training, some school-based or places that interact with schools will have certain requirements that they have to heed to regarding functioning in the school and how they're screening their mentors and mentees. In terms of like other guidelines, I think that in order to meet the standard of the elements kind of following those benchmarks that we mentioned, but any youth serving organization that interacts with youth is required to do background checks and should be following that. Is there a standardized tool recommended for screening? Yes, and you have the standards now, and we're so excited that you have them. How thorough should the screening process be? What are red flags? I think we covered some of that. But the screening process is as thorough as you want it to be, but the standards outline kind of what those 8 main steps are, and you can even add some extra things in if you want to screen even more deeply. All right. Well, those were all the questions that y'all had for us. We are going to wrap it up with any other questions that y'all might have. And then in your own, oh my goodness, I'm all over the place. Okay. In your packets, you'll have a space for reflection. I know we're over time, but you can do this, in your own head. You can do it in your packet. You can do it in the chat if you're really feeling it. But a reflection, I really want y'all to just think about 3 learnings or practices you'll take back to your organization and you would like to implement. 2 learnings or practices that you would like to strengthen. You might already be doing them, but you want to strengthen them, and 1 that you would like more information about. So just some self-reflection there. But as y'all are thinking through that, and again, this is in your packet, these are some resources we're going to share with y'all, and we really want y'all to have access to. We'll make sure we share this in our follow-up email. So we have some great things here about different background check items. We have the link to the Elements of Effective Practice, which is, we went over standard 2 today. Some information about the Maryland background checks and some locations for fingerprints, the net check that we talked about, and how to get technical assistance, free consultation with Mentor. But that is all we have for y'all. So thank y'all for being here today. Does anyone have any other questions as we round out?
I just wanted to add, I did put my contact information in the box because the original email for this went to the person that no longer works for the company.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that everything came to my email. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Y'all did so great at asking questions preemptively. We covered all of them. So next week we have Mentor Mania, which is a social media campaign we have going on. We'd love for y'all to participate. You'll see things that are posted on our socials and highlighting different programs, and ensuring that everyone we're pushing people to the Mentoring Connector, which is a resource we have that allows prospective mentors to find mentoring programs near them. But also it allows mentees to find mentoring programs near them that fit their needs. So we're going to be pushing that out all next week. You'll see it all over our social media. Please feel free to support and retweet, reshare, do all those good things. And also share things about your organization too, so they can find y'all in the Mentoring Connector if you are in it. And if not, we'll share in the resources. You'll find information about that as well. But that is all I had for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Thursday afternoon.
Survey will pop up when you close Zoom. Please fill it out, and we'll see you next time, y'all.
Yes, I'll hang out if anyone has any last questions. Thank y'all.
Thank you.